Thursday, June 19th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Paula, the roll call, please.
Commissioner Arterberry.
Present.
Commissioner Hostrop.
Present.
Vice Chair Wiegand.
Present.
Commissioner Heller.
Here.
Commissioner Wick.
Here.
Chair Cohen.
Here.
And Commissioner Hawley will not be here today. Or ever again.
I might mention this is the Palm Springs Public Arts Commission. The report of the posting of the agenda, please.
The agenda was posted at City Hall on June 12th.
Thank you. And let's have the approval of the minutes. You all got your minutes of Thursday, May 8th. You all had a chance to read them. Do I have a motion for approval of the
I
minutes?
have a question.
Certainly. Questions?
In here, we say under 1, Path of the Bighorn.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 2. And we say that there are tentative plans to place one ram at the Palm Springs Library painted by Sidney Sheldon.
No.
Isn't that sponsored by Sidney Sheldon? I can't.
He painted it too.
He actually painted it? Okay, just,
As far as I know he did. I looked at the packet.
I wasn't sure. Okay.
How about if I check on it?
Maybe.
Yeah,
I
I'll do
questioned
that.
that too. One other question, did they have 33 that were sponsored already?
Yes, that's what she said. There was 33 sponsors.
Sponsored
Yes.
already, okay.
Other questions or comments on the minutes? If
Make a
not,
motion to approve?
second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? They are accepted. And now let's move to public comments. I see some publics. Jeffrey? No comment. No?
Janice?
Should I introduce Jan? Sure. Okay. I'd like to extend a very hearty welcome to somebody lurking in the back of the room. If you could stand in all your glory. We'd like to officially welcome Janice Kleinschmidt, the newest member of the Palm Springs Public Arts Commission. Bravo. We had a very wonderful interview, city council members, and I was there as an advisor. And Janice, we look forward to working with you. I've worked with Janice before, and with great pleasure, we welcome you aboard. And look forward to 40 or 50 long years of working with you. Of course, that's very illegal, but we look forward to your happy smile and to your major contributions to the commission. Good luck to you.
Thank you. I'm very looking forward to it myself.
Thank you. So we did have a public comment, because you're still public. If there are no public comments, then let's move on to legislative action. First on the agenda is Sunrise Place.
Actually, we're going to pull that from the agenda and put it on in July.
Okay. Now our favorite topic, budget review.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're going to provide you more budget information than you thought you would ever see, probably more than you've ever seen.
That's for sure.
You know, we've been talking about it for the last 3 or 4 months about the budget and kind of what the commission's raised questions about kind of what money you have and what's in the bank and that sort of thing. So we've taken the last couple of weeks and took the opportunity of having an extra week this month to go back through the last couple of years and create a budget summary so you can see kind of where the money's gone over the last few years and kind of what the status of the public arts funds finances are now. And let me just walk you through it fairly quickly. But we started with the fund balance going back, let's see, I guess it's 2 years, 6/30/01. And, you know, after the close of the books, you had $259,574 in the Public Arts Fund For the fiscal year 2001, 2002, you had revenue coming in of 260,000, of which 202,000 was public arts fees. The miscellaneous income, I think, was largely the first year's contributions toward the Chihuly, and then expenditures of 253,000. So you're at about a break even, and you ended the year with a fund balance a little bit more than you started the year with. Last year, actually this current year, and we could only give you estimates, and this is up through this is based on the expenditure status from May 31st. You can see interest went down quite a bit. Obviously, what the city's earning, just like what everybody else is earning on our money, is quite a bit less. But the arts fees went up from 202,000 to 229,000, and then the 88,525. I think a little bit of that is from the Pound Springs Paints and Shoots art show, and then the majority of it is Chihuly related fundraising that the commission did for a total revenue of 322,929. But the expenditures, and you see largely that's gone in arts projects, and of course it's 150,000. The whole 150 I think was booked this year for Chihuly, and so that's a part of that. So you spent 409,000, and that's caused to decrease the expected or the estimated fund balance for this year down to 179.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
The excuse me, the outgoing of the expenditure, just a second, of the 315.
Right.
Half of it you said, but what is the other half?
Well, we summarize that on the second
okay.
page, so I'll get to that in just a minute. The next section is, it shows the actual budget adopted by council, and the budget on the revenue side, we've had the same revenue estimates for the last 13 or 14 years. We plug in 80,000 or 81,000, I guess, in arts fees. As you can see, in the last couple of years, the arts fees have been over 200,000. It's a conservative budget estimate. And interest at 10,000, that's probably not conservative. That's probably a fairly liberal budget estimate. But a $91,000 revenue estimate. And then the administrative and arts project costs of 299,000, that would leave you at the end of the year, if this were in fact the case, you would be underwater. You'd be 28,544,000 in the hole. We think a more realistic budget amount is to add 100,000 to the arts fees. The building permits have not slowed down at all. As a matter of fact, there's several large projects that are coming through July, August, and September, and we think that the at least over 200,000 is a realistic number. The miscellaneous income, $2,500, we plugged in for the art show. It's reflected with a $2,500 expenditure. You know, the art show is kind of a wash. So we show the expenditure on the second page, and we plug the revenue in there. And then we took another look based on some of the things that we've done over the last few weeks, sort of after the budget, was kind of in train as far as administrative and the arts project costs, to get to a more realistic ending fund balance of $117,676. You can see, though, that the trend has been that over the last couple of years, we've been spending more than we've been taking in, and drawing down on the fund balance. So on attachment A, the second page, gives you an idea of, shows a couple of things. One is that the budget 2002-2003 is this current year, and that was a budget that was adopted assuming Diane was here, and Paula was 75% arts, and that there were some salary excuse me, salary charges from other accounts related to a couple of other projects. And then the approved budget shows what it was reflected on the first page. And then under the revised budget is what we think is actually probably going to be more technically the case. And these are the totals, the totals are essentially the same numbers that you see on the first page. Now, if you go to the third page, and this is a question that's been repeated in the 4 months I've been coming to these meetings, over and over. What is it costing us to maintain the fountain? And what are we spending on some of the other projects? So we decided, we thought it was important to let you understand fully kind of what the what the total costs are. And some of this is charged into maintenance. I think some of these are charged into specialized equipment, and some of it's charged into salary. So we had to sort of create this table that sort of show it all together. And in this year, there was because of the incorrect metering of the electric, and there was a water charge that was charged to the airport and then ended up having to be charged back to the fountain. The utility costs are higher. You're basically paying 2 years worth of utility costs in this current year, so it has inflated the actual amount of the fountain. You spent $57,010 this year for maintenance, $8,800 for water, $11,700 for electric, which included about $7,600 in a back charge, and pool supplies. We did the wand repairs, and we did some electrical repairs, and then the staffing. The overtime staffing was $25,933. So that's probably the first time you've seen this number. First time we've seen it. The first time we've sort of totaled everything up. Now, when you see the estimate of $20,000, what we did is we took the staffing out. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We think a realistic number, based on backing out the prior year charges, is that water would be about $5,800 a year, the electric about $4,100 a year, supplies, which is mainly filters and chlorine and that sort of thing, and $7,700 a year, and then maintenance items over and above staffing, $2,300 a year. So it's actually $20,000 a year in those sorts of maintenance type costs. And then we'll get to it when we get down to number 3. We'll talk about the staffing issue. In other projects, the summary of other projects, which is item number 2, shows that you've been very busy over the last year, and there's been a lot of other obviously much smaller projects that the arts program has done. We have the Chihuly installation and the cleaning of both the first 2 Chihulys, and I think there's a cleaning that's due actually pretty soon in July. You expanded the dog park with the new dog park fence. It was $4,750. Repaired and recoated the Desert Highland mural. It was $8,300. We bought the lights.
Vandalism, too. It's too
That's the anti-vandalism coating and
when it was vandalized.
and when it was vandalized. Yeah, there's a coating on it, and then there was a vandalism repair too. We bought art show lights, $1,782. The chairman of the Lynx and the Standing Women, there were some costs related to those two, $1,210. The Sonny Bono bust base, $3,292. The I-10 project, we expended $5,000, and then there's an additional $25,675 as an encumbrance. And then the reimbursement to John Westman for the Sonny Bono fountain. That was his arts fee, and that was paid a couple of years ago. That was almost $12,000, $11,787. And then there were some miscellaneous charges from engineering. I think some related to the interchange, was that right?
Yeah.
And I think mostly related to the interchange project. So you spent $42,413 in arts-related projects that are other than buying the Chihuli's and maintaining the fountain. But if you add it all together, $42,000, $57,000, and then the $150, that gets you up to about $250. And then the way finance allocates the city's administrative charge and insurance and that sort of thing is what it's at the bottom of the budget. It's considered an arts-related charge and not an admin charge, even though it's technically an admin charge. That's the additional part that's caused the when you look at the admin charge on the budget on the first page, or the the arts project charge for this current year, 315. That's what's brought it up to 315,000. And there were some other things too. There's smaller items. So, some of the things, going to number 3, some of the changes that we've made this year, and this is to the good. This will save money. Paula, in this current year, was 75% public art. She's basically an arts assistant with a relatively minor role as a department secretary. Now Paula is the department secretary. There's only one, and so she's been reduced in the arts program down to about 35%. She works now in economic development for redevelopment and recycling, and is basically the person that is the office manager for the department. So that saved you 40% of her salary. Diane is gone. Diane obviously was 100% out of arts. It's now 0. And I think somebody had a question about whether we're still paying it. No. When Diane left, that's it. We don't pay. There's no recurring charge to the program or anything for when she left.
No other charge.
No. She might have been able to cash out. I think she cashed out vacation time, that was accrued to her, but that would have cashed out when she left. And so, she's not still on the payroll. And
She didn't have as many years accrued as other people that had retired previously.
Okay, she didn't have
She had a
enough-
very small amount.
She didn't have enough years to qualify under the,
No.
well, it's not a matter of years. I mean, when someone's here 30 years, and especially employees that have been in the city prior to '86, I think, when they changed some of the leave accrual policies, and they've accumulated, thousands of hours in leave time, and then they leave. Sometimes, and I don't think the city does this anymore, but I know in the past with a couple of employees that were long-term employees, they've just, sort of paid them for a number of months until, they've sort of drawn that down. But in a case like Diane, who used pretty much most of her vacation time, when she left, she probably had, 30 hours maybe owed to her, and then cashed out, and she's gone. So she's,
we don't have any further responsibility for
Nope.
health insurance or anything
Nope.
for that.
None.
no. And she actually technically retired, so she's, she's in the PERS system now, and which is not, we're not paying anything into that. So, she's off the books, And then we replace her function with Kathy, who's 50% art, and then 50% economic development. They're at about the same pay range, so you can look at that as about a 50% savings in that function. Now, the maintenance staff, what we've looked to do is to try to replace using the Parks parks and downtown guys on overtime. You can see up here where we spent almost $26,000, and I think when we get to the end of the fiscal year, it'll be $28,000. For the same amount of money, you get a guy that can not just maintain the fountain, but all of the, the Desert Highland mural, all of the other issues, or all of the other pieces in the collection. Now, we're going to talk about maintenance and the maintenance program, and obviously there's some technical things that we're going to need to do, but the Parks Department made that proposal, and we thought, well, it's better than paying overtime, and it's just a better way to go. So that employee has not been hired yet, and it will be an employee in the Parks Department, and it'll be a charge in, and you saw that line item that shows the charge in there. But that would be available to maintain more than just the fountain, because this is almost $26,000 just for the fountain.
JR,
just
would
in
that
overtime.
person, I'm sorry to interrupt, would that person report to the Parks Department? And
Well, they'll be supervised by the Parks Department, but obviously if they're maintaining the arts, we're still working out how that supervisory function works and how the work flow gets managed. And
so we can see
that
where
sort of
exactly the
thing.
time's being spent?
Yep.
and- Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that work when one department pays for it and another department supervises?
Well,
I wonder.
it's
You
going to
must
be
say.
it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be kind of a management responsibility on our part to make sure that works. I don't think at the end of the day it's going to cost us more money. Hopefully, what we're going to end up with is more work, but it's going to be our responsibility to make sure that we're getting we're getting what we're paying for. So, and it's going to be it's definitely going to be on us to ensure that. And
Are they the ones selecting the person? Because I think we had some concerns about the qualifications in terms of what kinds of things they were going to need to be able to
well,
be
there'll probably
trained
be
to do.
there'll be a panel. We'll be on the panel. We'll make the director will make the final decision, but we'll be as part of the review process in hiring the person.
No.
So it's really like a mechanic. I mean, that's the title position. It's a parks maintenance mechanic, and it's not a mechanic under the hood mechanic, but it's it's a city type term for somebody that has some mechanical aptitude, I think.
So primarily for like the maintenance of the pool as opposed to, it seemed like somebody had expressed concern about things like the sculpture projects and that there's a certain way of cleaning those
Yeah.
without just
Well,
damaging them.
we're
Would we
gonna talk-
contract that out or?
Well, we're going to talk about that
Okay.
when we get to the maintenance item there. Let's see, where am I here? So in the budget. So what it shows is that, we've gone from 1.75 employees to 1.85 employees, but we think that overall will still represent a savings over what we were spending last year on salary. When you add the positions in our department plus the fountain maintenance person, it will still save us $30,000 or $40,000 a year in salary costs over what we were spending this year. And it'd be nice if it were $60,000 a year, but it's as long as we're maintaining the fountain, it's
It almost looks like it would be because otherwise we were paying for the 26 over here plus the 144. So when you
Well, the
compare that to
26
the
was-
106, we're really saving about 60, 70,000.
well, the 26 is part of the 144. Because when you look at the salary charges, other accounts, and the temporary employees, that was $27,000. If you go to attachment A, the big sheet with the three or four columns of budgets, and you look at the regular employees, 45,490, and then 14,000 plus 13,000, that really is sort of equivalent to the 26, that's where it was
So
being charged
the
into.
25 that was included for the maintenance, that was included that 57 on that other page, really 25 of that was really included then in the personnel costs?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it
Actually,
was-
it came out of the special projects and arts maintenance line items.
Right. It came out of those line items. What it meant is we never actually charged. We never charged
Right, we
those.
didn't show it
They
as
set up-
employee
They set up,
charges.
they set up employee accounts, 14,000 for salary charges and other accounts, and 13,000 for temporary employees. And then at the end of the day, what they did was they just charged in the arts maintenance account instead of charging into the employee accounts. So we didn't really spend 144 on salary or in those salary line items. We spent that salary amount for that person out of the arts maintenance account.
What's the
And,
48,000?
So when you look at the
Yeah.
budget versus actual, the reason there's such a big difference is part of it got popped down below
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
maintenance part,
Right.
okay.
I have just one question on, if I'm understanding correct, even though we're doing all of the reduction in the savings of the $38,082, but we're also, it's not actually a savings because we're giving up staff, isn't that correct? I mean, we had, prior to that, we had Diane at 100%, we had Paula at 75%, now we're gonna have Paula at 35%, and we're gonna have Kathy at 50%.
Well, it's true. It would have been
Right.
nice to have
Right.
1.75 employees in the office.
Right. But I mean, the bottom line, what I'm getting at
Yeah.
is the reason we're having the savings
Yeah.
is that we're cutting back on staff hours, is what it
We're
is. It's
taking
not like
point-
we're-
0.9 people out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not like, oh boy, we cut all these
Yeah.
costs. We've given up
0.9.
people.
We're working so much harder though, and so much smarter that you'll never notice the difference.
I had a sign like that once on my desk, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. So I don't think you're really going to notice that a diminishment in the amount of work that staff's going to be able to do. Plus, you know, for example, there's nothing reflected on my time. And I'd say probably 10% of my time at this point is, and maybe, hopefully it's not going to be forever, but is now spent on, on arts. And we're not even charging that in, so. And that would be really expensive.
We don't mind.
JR, on the page where we're going budget versus actual, and we have the specialized equipment and the airport Chihuly under the arts charges, is part of the specialized equipment, the 76,000, is part of that include some of these in 1 and 2 on the second page?
Yes,
Because it looks like some of it's included there and some is under art
Yeah.
maintenance?
Yes.
right.
Okay.
We kind of, in order to show the actual cost of the fountain and the various other projects, rather than show you arts maintenance as the breakdown in that and the specialized projects, it's the combination of the both, of both.
Is there any way we can, or do you guys kind of have an idea of what the other 30,000 went to?
Well, the
when you look at the-
2565, actually, if you add up the 57, the 42, and the 25 encumbrance, will
Oh, the
add up,
25.
Yeah, it
Okay.
includes that encumbrance,
Okay, I
yeah,
realize
so.
that.
adds
Okay.
up to the specialized equipment and the arts maintenance.
So I didn't realize there come
Right.
encumbrances in there. I'm pretty close
Yeah.
then.
Yes.
Okay.
I caught that last night, actually.
That's actually a little bit less, because I think that only 30,000 was
Right.
encumbered, so you've got about $675 savings.
Saving you more money.
So is the encumbrance for that part where we did the project design on I-10?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
$30,000.
Yeah.
5 actually spent in the 25 encumbrance.
Now, going down to the last section, we also wanted to kind of highlight some of the other unique costs and projects that you did this year and that you paid for that are not anticipated or budgeted for this year. And that was largely the arts map. You had almost $11,000 for the cost of the map, the setup and the printing of that, and almost $2,100 for photos for the map. And then you see that $2,643 is Palm Springs Art Show. And that, when you go back to that revenue number of the $2,500, the art show is kind of a wash. The fees pay for the supplies, so you have to show it on both sides.
Well, the
And,
map should be a wash too, because we sold people to sponsor on that map, so that map,
So that will be the other,
It should be in some of the revenues.
Well, that might have, then that must have been in,
the miscellaneous
I
income.
mean,
You
we
didn't
raised
sell
money
that-
for that.
We
but
s-
you didn't sell that this year, you sold it last year, I
I
think.
think we collected it, didn't we, when
When do we
when we did the
collect, when
print?
do we collect them? We s-
I thought we collected the same year that we spent the money.
I don't think so,
No, I
because
don't
you
think
have,
so.
We
you
collected
have
them.
miscellaneous income of 45,400,
Yeah, we collected
plus
quite ahead of time.
88,500, which was 130, that's your 133, that's your 133.9, so that's your, this is all Chihuly money.
I
So
remember
you
paying
probably,
2 years ago.
2
you
years
probably
ago, I
collected, collected money in 2000, 2001, and so that was booked, that shows up,
How much
where that
were
shows up,
those? And how many how many did we collect?
We sold a lot, almost all of those
We sold,
spaces.
but how many, do you remember how many
I
photographs
don't
there were?
remember the exact
Oh, I don't
number off the
remember
top
the
of my head.
number.
But if we did, there were only, if we sold all but I think we sold all but 4. And if there were 200 times, let's say 30.
I think it's about 32.
So let's say we sold 30, so 30 times 200.
so where that money was reflected is in your beginning fund balance, where
2
we start
years.
at the beginning of 259, that money's
Wasn't
there.
last year. I know it wasn't last year.
Yeah, that project took a long time, and so you went out and collected all the money, like, it's now 3 years ago, and we did the map this year, and so that's where it is.
We're good pavement counters.
Is-
You know, the one thing I was noticing, there's 2 non-recurring things. I mean, like the summer of the fountain, we saved $37,000 on this year's estimate against last year's actual, and then again, the 42,000 on one-time charges. There's 79,000
Well,
right there.
you don't really save the 37,000 on the fountain, it's just we broke it up in
In
we
that
have,
respect,
we
yeah.
have like utilities and supplies and that sort of thing in one item, and then you have the salary costs of
Maintenance,
actually somebody
Which we're
maintaining
gonna
it.
replace anyhow.
Which you're gonna, yeah.
We're
but
still gonna have that.
You still have that cost, so
yeah.
it looks like that's about what it's gonna cost
Yeah.
going forward.
The really only, and the really only one that's truly not being replaced is that item number 2 on page 3. The art show lights and the Westman reimbursement
Yeah.
and the Sonny Bono bust and all
Mhm.
that.
The printing item on page 2, the 11,000, is that the map that shows up again on the bottom of 3?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. It looks like there was a little bit more printing than, we did
Well,
some
I'm
other
sure there was
printing, yeah.
A little bit
yeah,
more, sure.
Yeah,
We have to pay for all of our in-house stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
didn't we print our fancy postcard that goes out for
right,
the
and so
art
they,
show?
they charge us for that, and Julie stuff,
Invitation.
and,
So the arts fee on page 1, the 181, is a pretty good educated guesstimate of
Mhm.
the extra $100,000 based on the fact that things are moving along at a nice clip.
yeah, I think it'll be higher than the 229, but I wouldn't put that down on paper. I think, I mean, we also work in economic development, we see what's coming in.
That's why we
And,
like to have you on our team.
Yeah, and, but it's not very prudent to say, well, we think it'll be, 240 or 250, and so therefore, let's plug that in.
Yeah.
This is a number that was lower than this year, lower than the previous year, and it's in league with what it was like 3 years ago. And,
And the arts project expenditure on the revised line of the 149, 159, on page
Yes.
1, that
Page-
149, 159 includes,
that would include, let's see, that is your, it's this one here. It's the 41,250 for total materials and supplies. The special charge is at 27,909, plus 80,000 for specialized equipment.
so that's for 2003 and 4, that's for,
0304, yeah.
and the expenditure for this year that we're in now.
Is 185, 159.
That's the budget.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, it's a 315, 315, 227.
And that one, does that include the projected expenditure of the entrance sign?
No.
None
The
of this.
three,
includes
the 315, 227 is, you got 150,000 for Chihuly, right? And then you have,
You know, the 15.5 for the map and the,
yeah, you
Art.
get,
and
well,
the-
you have,
Is that, I'm looking
No,
for
you-
that listing on.
well, you have basically about $68,000 in supplies. Is that right?
Oh, here it is, I'm seeing it.
And, is that right?
Yes.
And then 20,000 for charges.
So what
And
what I'm saying is, if
226.
we, if the entrance sign gets approved, all of this is thrown for a gigantic loop.
Well, is that the next item?
Yes.
You want to sort of segue to that, or do you have any
Any other questions?
other questions on the budget?
basically, it looks like the budget for the coming year, the only amounts for like art projects, because really, out of that 149, about 28 of it is really allocated administrative costs, right?
Right, that's correct.
So there's 80,000 for special project, which is art projects.
Right,
And there's 41,000 for supplies and materials, which is probably not really controllable, and that's not gonna go necessarily into art projects, it's really just maintenance. So we're looking at 80,000 for the coming year.
80,000 is specialized equipment?
That would be for the art projects, is what it looks like.
Right,
Is
and
that
that,
right?
that has been typical, it appears, through past reviews, or, you know, and looking at the budget from past years.
Is
It
that-
seems to be.
that's been the budget, the 80,000 has been the
80,000.
budget every year.
50015 is arts projects?
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's been a budgeted 80,000 every year for probably 10 years.
It's an odd thing to call it specialized equipment.
Yeah, it's just,
Sounds
that's,
like tractors.
it does, it does.
It does.
Or- It's, I think Diane,
Paintings on it.
Diane over the years has tried to get that reclassified to, arts acquisition or something like that. And it's just, it's a finance, accounting, their system term. And so they're comfortable with that. But that's what it is.
So basically, what we have to spend is the 80,000, and then we would have an estimated 117 left if we did that, if everything else went the same. So
Right.
we have 80 plus the 117 if we
Right.
wanted to spend everything.
Right.
We have no budget for computer
One big
software?
party?
Yeah.
Oh, what do we have software?
Well, tells us what we have.
So,
Thank you, JR. I think that helps at least tell us where we're at.
are there any other,
It tells us for the first time.
any other questions? So has, like, the fog lifted and?
Fog? A wall.
Well.
So when we pay that 25,000, it's not coming off of this other money, because we've already.
It's
Oh,
already
no, that's
encumbered.
already
We've already-
taken care of.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
accounted for.
It's already encumbered.
Do you have a pay-as-you-go plan?
Pay as you go? Sure, everything is pay as you go.
Mm.
Sounds like our housing program.
Oh,
Don't get off the agenda.
No, let me
Okay.
tell you something.
Okay.
Any other questions here? Thank you. This is, I believe the word's enlightening.
Well, Kathy did most of this.
Thank you, Kathy. This is
So-
very enlightening.
Thank you, and a lot of work from Paula as well.
Thank you, Paula. This is very enlightening.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Harry.
Truly, truly. Anything else on any other questions? Okay. City entryway signage.
So,
Mr. Raymond?
well, following up on our discussion of last month, where I said, don't worry, you have the money.
You lie.
Well, you know, we did all this work. You know, we're in the middle now of doing the bid documents, final design, and the bid documents on the visitor center. We're working on the landscape feature between the sign and the visitor center as well. We're getting the lease all formalized. The redoing of the sign is something that everybody would like to see done. The city council, you know, when we initially made a presentation, a couple of presentations on what we were going to do in the visitor center, you know, we had a budget of somewhere in the 700 and some odd thousand, you know, for what we were going to do. In the end, they decided that what the budget on that project was 500,000. And they're going to spend the whole 500,000. Well, they have to build a parking lot, and they have to do the interior improvements. And the big thing, of course, is the bathroom building. And because there's only 2 bathrooms currently in that building now. One of them is going to be taken out for storage in a video room, and you're down to 1. So with 1,000 people a day through there, it'd be a long line for the bathroom. So as part of this, I mean, the idea that we could redo the visitor sign, given that you did run a design competition a couple of years ago, and everyone really likes the new sign concept, has sort of come forward like, yeah, let's do the visitor sign at the same time. I have to say that the city, meaning the city's general fund, pretty clearly doesn't, you know, given the deficit and kind of we're tapping fund balance basically, or we might actually bond for the visitor center, but we're going out on a limb financially on the visitor center itself. That's probably not a correct way of saying that, but I think we're spending up to what they are comfortable with. The idea that another funding source, namely the Public Art Fund, would pay for the visitor sign is what the thinking is. Now, I came to you last month and we talked about that. We had a design contract, or we had the design contracts about $12,000, I think, to actually do the design and the bid documents and everything. The estimated cost on the project is about $140,000. So you're looking at about $150,000 for design plus the actual construction. I was pretty clear, it was my understanding prior to doing all this research, and that we probably had $300,000 in a fund balance even after this year, and that you could comfortably spend, you know, half that and still have 150 and still do everything else that you wanted to do. I can't honestly say that today. I mean, that you, and I think I mean, this is sort of uncomfortable. I think we'd still like the commission to do this, but I can't tell you that you're comfortable enough financially, as far as the fund goes, to go ahead and spend $150,000 on another project. Now, it wouldn't be 150 on top of, you know, what's already budgeted. You have 80,000 in specialized equipment without a project attached to it, so you're looking at probably another 70,000 over on top of that, 70 to 80,000, because there is some expenditure in specialized equipment that that we just kind of, as you can see, just kind of naturally spend every year, upgrading things and that sort of thing. So it's really the commission's call. I mean, if you decide that it's something that you can't afford, and you're not comfortable or didn't anticipate, like all the comments I heard last week, or last month, that you never anticipated that you would be the ones to suspend it, then I have to go back to the city and say, well, it looks like we're not going to do it. That's not the end of the world. We could do it later, maybe with a different funding source, or you may decide down the road a year or so that that's something that you want to do. Having said that, I know one of the concerns last month was, well, if we did that, we'd only do that, and what about all the directional signs, and what about the idea of doing other signs on Indian and on East Palm Canyon, on Ramon, and the other entryways of the city? We have talked to some of the property owners and developers at the other entryways in the last month, namely on Indian. Talked to the company that's bought most of the acreage, 309 acres on the, it's actually on the wrong side of the road, but on the east side of Indian. And they're looking at a major, residential subdivision there. And, they brought it up unsolicited that they'd like to do some sort of, gateway element or something to show that you're arriving in Palm Springs. And we said, well, lo and behold, we actually have a design. And let's give you we'll give you the design, and you can just go ahead and build that. And they were pretty positive. And I think that if that project goes forward, that they would actually build that as part of their gateway element on Indian. Again, it's on the east side, so it's on the going out of town side, but you would see it as you came down Indian. It wouldn't be on the right-hand side, it'd be on the left-hand side as you come in on Indian. On the Ramon entry, city or the redevelopment agency is the owner of the land when you first get to Palm Springs, the dump site. And we have been working with a developer for over a year on a major shopping center for that site. And actually, tomorrow's the close of the date for the EIR consultants, and they have a tenant lined up, major tenant lined up for that site. And I'm pretty confident that we could include as part of the DDA, the Disposition and Development Agreement, with the developer that they would incorporate a version of that site on Ramon.
North
Now,
or south side?
it'd be on the north side of Ramon, so, but it's, you come over the bridge and it's at, not Crosley, but San Luis Rey.
On the north side?
On the north side. And so, we've got a couple of, and we're looking at a project at Gene Autry and East Palm Canyon on the south side there. And
South, east.
by southwest.
They're all on the
Southeast
wrong
is,
side.
yeah, I know. They're all,
No, all
no,
three
on
of them.
the Ramon is on the right, side. Because on the north side, as you come into town, it'd be on your right-hand side.
No,
and-
that's, oh, that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's north. Indian would be on the wrong side, and coming in on
Would be on the
111 would be on the
wrong side,
wrong side.
yeah. But,
So we do something different.
We
but,
can turn the city around.
well,
Of course.
if you wanted to do it on Indian, on the right-hand side, we actually own a couple of lots that,
But the developer wouldn't pay for it.
right. Yeah,
Back to that again.
JR,
yeah.
what would be a time frame for this kind of a project, just for the entry sign? Is that something that would happen in the same fiscal year, or is it something we could split between?
That's what I was gonna ask next.
Well, I think it was my original ambition to keep the visitor center project, the landscaping project, and the gateway sign
On the same
all
line.
to be sort of more or less on the same fundings, or not same funding, but the same physical, so we're out there basically once.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to be. I mean, the important thing is to get tourism out of where they are in November and into the new, or in October, I guess, in October and into the new building. So the most important thing is the building, the visitor center. The other things like demonstration landscaping that we're working with Desert Water Agency on, which is the area between, excuse me, the actual visitor center and the sign, we're looking at sort of landscape pathways and some, almost like, it's not demonstration garden, but low water landscaping. They have an interest in that. That could happen. It'd be nice if it happened all with the other project, but that's the sort of thing that we could be doing that next spring. We could be doing it after, because it's not really affected by, nor does it really affect the getting in the building. And it's the same thing with the visitors sign. You could look at doing it this year, but really, sort of designing it this year and then sort of bidding it, to be done like next summer, which would go into 2 fiscal years.
Well, if we
And
could
you'd be
break
able
it
to-
up into pieces, it might be easier to swallow, because right now, if we were to do it all at once, we'd have very little left in the
Yeah.
fund, and we've got other projects kind of in
Yeah.
process.
No, I understand.
When do you want when's the visitor center scheduled to move and open?
October
In October?
of this year.
And when is our fiscal?
Starts next week, July 1st.
And
So you have a whole year, and then what you may decide to do, and you may decide it's more prudent to do, why don't we design it this year, and if we do it next year, then you have savings from this year, and then you have another year's the regular specialized equipment budget, and then you have 2 years. Because if you don't, whatever you don't spend this year it goes into the fund balance, and then it's available to be spent next year.
we would also be able to actually realize what's happening with the extra 100,000 that's
Mhm.
projected in here. I mean, is it 100,000 more? It might be 150 or 175,000 more, which would really make us flush. You know what I'm saying? This is boosted up from 80,000 or 81,000 to 181,000. It might be 250,000. I'm wondering if there's a contingency that we could, like a rubber band, we could act faster. In other words, what if we see this moving along and we see that our funds are much greater than we thought they were?
I just wanted to put in that I'm in favor of doing something for the location. I think it's the #1 entry
Oh,
to Palm
absolutely.
Springs, and I think it has real importance, and because of the budget situation with the city. And I think if possible, if we can assist, I'm kind of leaning that way. There was some discussion that we had at the last meeting that if signage falls under the Public Arts Commission in the first place, didn't we have some discussion about that?
Yeah, you're going
So-
to check with legal.
Yeah, I think we need to cross that bridge to find out even if we're even able to assist in that, because I don't know if signage falls under art and public places.
That was something you were gonna get back to us on, if that's under our purview, if we're allowed to do that. I mean, can we do that? I mean,
Well, we researched that a little bit. Actually, I had a conversation with city attorney and one of the assistant city attorneys, and I think I don't have a written opinion. The off-the-cuff opinion is that if you feel it's art,
It's an art.
it's art. And you are the commission, and you are the arbiter of what is art. And I'm not trying to be facetious,
money do talk.
but
don't they?
it is, but there's a certain amount of, I mean, there's a lot of truth in that. If it were a sign, if it were just a billboard, or something like that, and no matter how you wanted to dress it up, or if it were just a sign, like a regular freeway sign, and you said, well, you're a good funding source and we'd like you to pay for that, I think you'd have a lot of, probably a lot of issues with that. But given the design that you've adopted as the design, there's a lot of elements in there that are, sort of installation, artistic installation sorts of things, the frame, the lettering. More than a sign, you could argue it's really a landscaping project. I mean, it's landscaping, and it's a concrete wall, and there's a water element, and then there's the stamped concrete compass and that sort of thing, and the little parking area, and the gravel, and the boulder, and everything. And somebody could make the argument that, you know, that's really a landscape feature. But I think the opinion is that if you think that the whole package is artistic and is art, then it's an eligible expense for the fund.
Well, if I can interrupt you, we did ask for proposals, it's on, by artists, you know, for this design, and we reviewed them, and this final design was the one we all decided was the appropriate one. So I feel that it is art, because that's what we were looking for in the first place, and we felt this was appropriate, and we all decided as a committee that this was the right entry sign and project for us. So I think we're covered. I think it is art.
I got one other thing. I mean, if the commission decides to go ahead and assist in the funding on it, I myself find it a
Assist.
stretch to call it artwork, but you
not
know,
assist.
if, you know, but anyway, let's say that if we go ahead and do that, the nice situation is, number one, I would feel very uncomfortable spending down the whole fund to cover the signage. Saying that there is a sign there already, I mean, the immediate situation is kind of taken off our shoulders. If there was nothing there and they decided to put in, you know, remodel the old tram station, you know, and do all this, and there's nothing leading into it, it would be a whole different story. But possibly, you know, I leave it up with the other commissioners. If we decide to go ahead and do it and then pay the funds, the fees, the first part on the design, the 12,000 or whatever it is, and then maybe we can break it down. Possibly we can do some cutting. I'd like to address some of these other things in regards to the fountain, and maybe we can save a little bit of money there. Maybe our fees can be, you know, increased. In other words, what we were projected is a low projection. Maybe we can split it up and cover the thing over a period of time.
Two things in relation to what you just said. One is, could we get a little more definite, is there any way to pinpoint that 181 and see if that's truly real, or if it could be either that or more? Can we find out if it's actually going to be, maybe it's 200 or 225? Can we get a little closer to reality on that? That would be number one. Number two, is there any way of negotiating the payment of this fee to the people that are doing the sign, and give it to them in 2 installments rather than one big chunk?
In the actual construction project?
Yeah. In other words, instead of giving them the full $140,000, give it to them in 2 payments. Give it to them in 70 and 70.
Well,
I think we're good for it. I mean, I don't think,
Yeah.
we're not gonna skip town.
Well, you're probably not gonna pay them all at once anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In other words, let's see if, you know, we know them, and they know us.
well, you're getting in the Public Works Code and stuff like that.
Well,
that
no,
I'm
I
not really-
understand that, but I mean, if there's some
really
way of
familiar
doing it.
with.
Well,
It-
traditionally, isn't it, I mean, usually you can break down a project by various phases, and once you finish
Yeah.
a phase, you can
Yeah.
say 25% at this point. I mean, right now, we're just looking at one number for the project, but I guess what I was
Yeah.
wondering, in terms of breaking it down, when I asked about, you know, can we start it now, do something later, is there
Well,
phases of the project we could break down?
That's how they would be paid, and then there would be even a holdback at the end and that sort of thing. But my understanding of Leo's question is that, you know, if you were to build it, say, in September, and you paid him 70, and can't we wait till, like, next fiscal year to pay him the other 70? And that, I don't think, you're getting into something I'm not knowledgeable about.
I'm being naive,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I'm questioning that, and also, we're assuming here, like, we have 81,000 budgeted,
Mhm.
and you're saying, well, but it's really 181.
Okay.
If that 181 doesn't come to fruition, we're really in trouble.
Yeah, you are. Well, let me do this. We'll come back with an educated guesstimate, and we'll talk to building department and planning about, we'll sort of total up what the estimated fees are likely to be for the year, for next month. On the, I guess on the actual sign project, I think my recommendation would be that if you decided to go forward with that one, we actually start the design, this summer, and that then you ask us to wait or time it so that we're actually bidding it in next fiscal year, so that you have some fund balance from this year, and then you can budget the remainder in next year, and then you just so we do it next summer.
Or if we find out from you after this that we're really little fatter cats than we thought we were, maybe we'll all have a little bit of a heavier weight lifted from our shoulder. I think,
But
my feeling is we're being asked to do a lot, and it is a surprise for all of us, and because we've all gone back, Leona's gone back, Paula's gone back and looked at all the minutes for the last 2 or 2.5 years since we started this project, and we can't find anything that says that we were ever going to be responsible for doing this. And so it's a surprise. And I think what we're saying is, we'd like to see this thing happen.
Yeah.
And if we're the ones doing it, we're going to probably be very proud of the fact that we did this thing in the long run, because it's going to be something we're all going to love.
I want to ask a couple of things here. After looking at the breakdown on the fountain and what it costs to maintain, all right, supposing we pay for this project, then who maintains it?
Well, now you got a guy that's on your payroll to maintain
Oh,
stuff.
then it comes out of our budget then.
Well, you're already paying somebody.
Well, I know, but this adds to the job, and so the expenses increase. Then we're responsible for maintaining the Palm Springs sign on 111?
One of the, well,
Other signs?
I don't, no. It's a good question. I don't think you,
This is getting to be a morass.
yeah, it is.
It is.
I don't think you're responsible for or certainly not responsible now for maintaining the sign.
Well, no, we have nothing to do with the sign now,
I
but
think
if
if-
that's our project. And then there are the other,
Well-
5 entries?
You could make that as a condition of your approval, that
And
we
then-
will build it, but, we aren't gonna maintain it.
And then another thing, again, after looking at the upkeep on the fountain, they want a water feature out there. And that is absolutely the most impossible place to
Yeah.
have a water feature. I think that whole design maybe needs to be looked at
Yeah.
and gone through again.
Well,
And
the
the lighting.
council's told us no water feature.
Yeah, because we said a long time ago, we're
yeah.
never going to
Yeah.
vote on another
Now,
water
the-
feature.
yeah,
But they have that in there, that's in
They
the
have it in there.
design.
they have it in there, but we've told them, you gotta take the water feature out. Now, they've said, well, the water feature really is an enclosed little trough, and it's got,
Yeah.
glass on top of it, and it's just moving water through.
But it
so-
has to have a
But
pump. and-
anytime, yeah, you're
That
exactly
water has to
right.
come from somewhere.
And that surely could revise the cost on it, because I imagine water enclosed and glass on top.
I think
and so on.
you're looking at the summary of the fountain expenditures ought to make you very afraid of water.
Make
of
me very
owning-
afraid of the whole design.
Yeah,
And we learned from the Demuth Park project that we need to go out and walk through a project and exactly see with stakes where things are going to be
And
and
scale.
the size of them
scale.
and so on.
Never
We
again.
were looking at a design and expecting someone else who was going to take over this project to do this. Now, if it becomes our project, we need to go back and do a whole lot more research on that, because we felt Demuth was a little too small for the site.
A little?
Well, I'm being kind. A little too small for the project. And if we're ultimately responsible for how this goes.
well, I mean, it's pretty clear from the last couple of months in talking to you about the maintenance issues, that you don't, I mean, even if you decided that it was okay to pay for the construction of this, it was pretty clear that the commission doesn't want to have any maintenance responsibility for that, that it's a, gift to the city, essentially, but the city's, responsible for maintaining that. I think that,
We don't want the city paying a lot either, because we
Well,
are
I think-
taxpayers in the city as well.
I think it's,
So is everybody else.
I think the design, if you take the water feature out and you're not running a pump and you're not worried about the trough and all that, you know, it's a concrete wall and a parking area and a boulder and landscaping. I mean, there's no moving parts. I think one of the things you have on the fountain is, in addition to pushing a lot of water, you have moving parts. You know, moving parts that get covered with corrosion and calcium and,
Exactly.
you know, all sorts of things. So there's a lot of design issues that we probably should have thought about 5 years ago when we were thinking through that. But you know, you live and learn, and this is what we're learning.
But J.R., excuse me for interrupting, but the point of the fountain is, in fact, they were asked, I wasn't on the commission at the time, they were asked to design a fountain.
Mhm.
They were asked to design a sign.
Right.
And so one is not the same as the other.
Right.
And if the effect of the water feature on this is a water effect, with today's modern technology, there must be something that can be done that'll give the effect of the reflection of water on
Mylar.
a stone wall.
Crushed glass.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
no, there's,
without using water.
Yeah.
But in the case of the fountain downtown, it's a fountain, so you gotta have water. Well, unless you do the thing like in La Quinta, there's this wonderful fountain at the corner of Washington and 111, that's a fountain without water. So maybe we could design that.
Well, we might come back to you with that.
In terms of what Leona was saying, in terms of responsibility for, you know, the size of it in relation to everything else, I mean, if we were to commit to the funding of this project, I would think that we could, you know, have other committees or other departments that would be responsible, whether it's planning or whatever, that's more, you know, able to make those kind of judgments, I mean, than we are.
Well, I think, and I don't want to get too far off the topic, but when we did the fountain project as a contract to David Morris, the designer, and you go ahead and build it. And so there was the competition and selection of the designer, and then it was his responsibility for bidding it and getting the contractor on board and all that. And I think that's another thing that we've learned. I don't think we would ever propose doing a significant, and that was a public works project. That was not done through the city's standard public works process. You know, we didn't have the engineering field supervisors out there every day to make sure that the, you know, soil was compacted correctly and that the you know, the concrete was poured correctly and that sort of thing, because there was a big tarp around it and it was David's responsibility and he was managing the contractor because it was, quote, an art piece. And I would never recommend building another thing like that. I think that in that fashion, I think, you know, we've learned a really hard lesson on that. This sign, we would take the sign design and basically get it over to probably either fold it in with the visitor center and bid it, you know, together with that, if we did it on the same schedule, or get it over into engineering and public works and just have them do the bid specs, bid it out as irregular. And then, because what you get with that is not just the bidding and the correct specs and everything, but you get the actual field supervision during the construction to make sure that it's actually that it's actually built to whatever the design is. Mm-hmm. And I think you know, one of the things with the fountain, and we're still sort of untangling that. You had somebody that built it. He just, you know, built it however he felt like building it. And you had an artist in New York who was out here and sort of back and forth, and Diane going out and, you know, saying, well, you know, I guess it looks all right, and, you know, it looks like a fountain.
It must be an elephant.
And it's not a criticism of Diane. It's just that it was the thinking that it's an arts project. It's an art piece. I got an artist, and it's just much better to do it hands off and get, even with the city's resources as stretched the way they are. It's just a much more prudent way to go about doing it, to do it as it is a public works project. It may be an art piece, and in the end, you can, you know, say, yes, it is art. We're the commission, we get to decide what art is, and it's art, but during the construction period, it's a public works.
Agreed.
You-
Couldn't agree with you more.
Do you need a motion on, or if we're done on this one? You need a motion on what to do at any other point?
No, we still need a piece of information.
Right,
on-
that would be what the
on
motion-
funds.
But you don't need a motion for that.
I think we should just wait on that one piece of, don't you?
Well, I think we need to be out there and walk through that with the people who have designed it.
I think what we need to do is first find out what kind of funds we have.
Yeah,
before we
that's-
go.
I do too,
Well,
and
sure,
then we'll
find
do-
out the
then we'll do
money,
all of
and we
that.
need to walk
Yeah.
through it, and we need to ask them about maintenance on this, and be sure that all of those things are included.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest in any way that the Public Arts Commission is involved with the maintenance of the project at all.
Oh, no, no, no.
Well, it shouldn't
no,
have to
there's-
be. I mean, they maintain
But-
that right now.
That's right.
I mean,
Right.
you know,
Right.
the city
I
maintains.
I think what
there's
JR is saying, this would be a
landscaping, watering, all
gift.
that.
If we financially could do it, it'd be a gift to the city, and we're done, we're out of there. I mean, you
But
can't get
still,
involved on
Totally.
the other side.
We need to include about maintenance, because somebody's gonna pay it.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna come out
Yeah,
of
right.
some
Well, they have
pocket.
maintenance out there now. And
Yeah.
if there isn't a water feature, you're basically talking
I
about
know,
landscaping.
but you don't want that maintenance to be a huge amount either for any department.
Well, Paul
With the
Paul
project,
just
that-
made the point that you don't want them now to go out there, and then when they fill out their time card, they say, you know, the 2 hours I was out there, that's charged to, you know, the public art.
Yeah.
so.
But is it really necessary for us to micromanage the plan?
Well,
You
no,
think so?
But there's another point to this too. We could all go out there en masse, but you have to have a good eye on scale and so on. And of this committee, we have feelings about it, but out of this group, there's one person here, and that's Harry, that has an educated eye and degreed eye that knows scale and proportion as far as
Harry
what.
can guide us.
Yeah.
Well, but that's why I think that we really, this needs to be a joint effort, and there
Yeah.
need to be other departments take responsibility for
Yeah.
whatever the appropriate
what the
supervision
scale
or
is.
maintenance is,
Could-
and then we
could you
just,
go
we're
out?
involved in the money
Yeah.
side, that's.
Could you actually go out there and stand there and say, well, this is going to be 6 feet 4 inches, and say, well, that's the right scale? I couldn't. I mean, I could tell you, looking at it on a wall and project it and say, that seems right to me, but what if it covers all of Mount San Jacinto from 5 feet away? I couldn't really know that.
But JR, isn't that where you said the engineering and
Yeah,
that
exactly.
department would come in?
Well, I think, you know, if it's okay with Harry, I think we'd like to press him in the service, maybe get somebody from planning out there, and,
Absolutely.
and,
And if you're wrong, then we kill you.
well, and the design, and like Tom Dosey or Gary or Jeff Tarasky. And we'll go out there with some yardsticks and,
Well, the designers can provide a
Yeah.
sight line
Yeah.
sketch for us.
Right.
Things that'll help everybody else kind of see what it's going to look like, what the scale will be like.
I don't know if these things that we've been looking at are to scale.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't.
Well,
yeah.
yeah,
You won't
they
know.
probably
Tom.
are, but, you know, they're just making a presentation.
Exactly.
You know, they're going to have to show us, you know, drawings, of what this is all going to be like, their construction documents.
Exactly.
One thing I was thinking about was, I mean, because we're talking about all these things, but we need to know what that estimate's going to be. And I was thinking that maybe after we have that number, and maybe we should even have it before next month, if they want to get the designers going on this.
Exactly.
Maybe waiting till next month, and then we start to say, okay, now we can think about this. Maybe if we get that number and have a subcommittee guided by our favorite accountant, you know.
Who would that be?
Can look at this and see, then they can come back to us and make a recommendation at the next meeting, or else, if it's more critical, have a special meeting. But at least by the next meeting, they can then recommend to us that, well, you know, Lori can look at it and say, well, I think we have enough money, maybe, you know, whoever else wants to be on that.
Who's on the sub for the entry? Do you have it?
I just sent you a new list. I mean, put it on with me.
One thing I would be
Oh, wait a
interested,
minute, I have it.
excuse me, one thing I would be interested in,
Harry, Lori, and you.
Perfect.
So we'll just keep that.
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
one thing I would be interested in knowing, if, in terms of whether we could afford it, is what our commitments are on our ongoing projects right now. I'm not sure what the dollar amount of that is at
We
this point.
have the plaques, et cetera, for the Chihuly, which is a definite cost.
And then beginning some repair and restoration
Right.
on our pieces.
Absolutely. And then we also talked about doing audio for next fall at the airport for the Chihuli's.
And also the Joshua Tree, I guess we have something we still need to do on the G-Class.
Correct. And the opening party for the, the dedication party for the Chihuli's. Those are all costs.
Well, I mean, this is all something the subcommittee could look at, and particularly since it would be the three of us.
But I mean, these are all drained on the budget.
Yeah, but you would know all those items, so we could sit down, and the three of us, so not everybody has to
Yeah.
be spending
So
all their
once we
time
have
talking
the
about.
the figures
Yeah.
from
Get that, and then we
Kathy
can really
JR.
come back with an educated presentation the
Yeah.
next meeting.
This will, if we do this, then it will leave us with.
Yeah.
56, but we're estimating it's 20, but that's just
No, I mean, we just need some numbers, some real educated numbers.
for the maintenance.
This revenue. Can't figure it out, just make it up.
That's
I think it will be very positive. There are a lot of projects going on, and I think if you
Everywhere I
listen to
look.
the Planning Commission, you'll hear reports of, 4,000 rooftops, and there's commercial projects and industrial projects that are going on as well. So we will do our best to put together that kind of picture with review with the Planning Department.
Is there any sort of a plan on the 140, or is that just sort of a ballpark number? I mean, is there something that kind of breaks that down, or something we can look at?
That was a ballpark
Okay.
number. That
On
was
what?
140 on the cost of the sign.
Oh,
Yeah. That was, I think they got what you saw, the presentation package, over to one of the local contractors who did a, kind of rough estimate.
Will it go down if they don't pay the water feature?
It'll go down a little bit,
it should.
yeah.
Just electrical and all
Sure.
of that.
Electrical should already be done. It's already lit up, the one that's there.
No,
Yeah,
but
but you'd have
the
to run-
kind of electrical that you would need pumps and things of that
Yeah,
sort.
Yeah.
Do we need to hold off on even considering approving the design, the 12,000? Or do we,
Well-
do we need to approve that before we have them come out and meet?
Their
Harry, and go through all
design
that?
things may change if we ask them to change their design. No, I'm not being
Yeah, no,
facetious,
I
but
know, yeah.
When would you want to schedule a site visit?
well, we
As
need
the
your
subcommittee,
numbers first.
Yeah,
well, assuming we can get those quickly.
Get the numbers, we'll look at what we think, and then, we should.
We're easy.
Y-
Yeah. It's not tax season.
Is it your goal then to meet before the July meeting?
Yeah.
To do a
Yeah.
site visit before the July
to.
meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Any other questions?
5:30 a.m.?
Well, it's gonna be cool tomorrow, so maybe
Come by my house, I'll give you pink lemonade.
Okay.
We need to kind of think of where you are, like, time-wise, because if we don't meet in August, some of this stuff's gotta be done, like, now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We can meet quickly. If we can get the numbers, we'll meet quickly on the sub, then we'll have the July meeting, and we'll.
Yeah,
go at-
because this meeting is late, this is a week late. You're only looking at 3 weeks away for the next meeting, so we'll get the numbers together, we'll get a site visit, get an idea of scale, and then maybe we'll talk to the designer about some of the design changes, like the water feature and some of the other things, and
It- Excuse me. Is it just the subcommittee meeting for the site visit?
yeah.
Okay.
What's the status of the drawings for the other project, for the tram, the gas station, the visitor center?
They're almost complete. They have to go back to, let's see, they're going to Planning Commission, I think, next week. And they're going to Planning Commission, I'm sorry, July 2nd. And they're going to HSPB, they're going to have a special meeting to look at that. But they're going to be bidding early part of July for the actual construction. Again, it's a parking lot the interior, there's some minor site improvements and the bathroom building. And then the additional landscaping to the north, or to the, I guess it's to the north, between the sign is a separate, is now considered a separate project. And and that's, so we may end up doing this in sort of 3 phases.
Yeah, because we can't go out to bid with the first phase of the project.
Right.
We don't have enough time to do that.
No. No. They're they're at least 6 months ahead of us on that.
Wonderful. Art collection maintenance issues.
Oh, boy.
Have one statement, are we getting a report on that, or what status are we in regards to, so we haven't just opened conversation?
Can
Well,
I just update you on 2 things
sure.
that were brought up? The standing woman, I just talked to Scott Meixel just before this meeting, and he said that additional concrete was poured yesterday. So, which means I haven't seen it. I mean, I just found that out today. So we haven't taken a look at it. Hopefully that solves that problem with the overspray on the back of that, And then on the Desert Highland, the little plaster that needs to be repaired, he said that'll either be done by this Friday or next Friday. So, but the guys just haven't been able to get out there. So I know those are 2 things on the list, and we're getting those taken care of.
I have a couple of other things.
We
Go
gave
ahead.
you a whole report
Yeah.
last time on the
Right.
things. I think we did leave one off, and that was Charlie Farrell over here.
Mhm.
And I went across the street and looked at it today, and we have a problem with the water, similar to the Standing Woman.
Similar to all your sculptures.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that's going to need,
We just don't do well with water, do we?
No, we don't.
Hence, we don't want it on the entrance sign.
I just want to update you on a couple of other things that we've been working on. One is the JFK bust, which I'll get to in a moment because we have Jeffrey Fowler here who has given us a bid to restore that. And also, we had a second bid, Beth, from John.
Simon?
Yes, who you had contact me, which was great, thank you. I did not hear from anybody else about other possible companies or people, individuals that you wanted to recommend for a bid. But the main issue, I think, is that with the change of hiring a maintenance person is going to change how we're going to write a bid for maintaining and conserving some of the statues. The maintenance person can actually work with us to address the issues that you raised in your subcommittee report. So as we've been trying to get to them, piece by piece and based on what the need is. But some of the cleaning items and things like that, that's what this person will be able to do. Rather than pay an additional contract for somebody to go out and do those kinds of maintenance things that would fall under that particular guise. We will have to write some sort of more formal proposal or bid request in that we have more than one person that is interested in doing that. So to be fair, we're going to have to do that, but that gets us into a situation of finding other conservators and maintenance types of companies. All that to say, in addition to that, we would ask under this proposal that whomever is chosen, that they also work with the maintenance staff to point out certain things that they could do to take care of the pieces. This would not be to do the technical, more professional and more artistic things that need to be done to some of the statues, the waxing and there's a lot of other things that I don't quite understand the language yet, but that would still need to be contracted out. So as we look at a budget and look at projecting what those costs will be, that's kind of a next phase that we need to get into. So with that, we haven't actually done the formal proposal for a bid on a maintenance program as we had started to discuss last month, but I do have bids for the JFK bust, which I'm going to hand out to you in just a moment. But I wanted to let you know also that the chairman of the Links piece, Jeffrey, is working on replacing the club. And with that, can you pass these out, please? There's,
Kathy,
yes.
I may not be able to be part of this because I met John Simon at where I work. And he has, I don't know, he's trying to, or he may have some sort of a working relationship with them. So I don't know if that means I should not be involved in this, or.
We'll have to check.
Paula,
I
what do
don't
you
know
think?
if there's a
I
conflict.
don't know him any better than I know Jeffrey Fowler.
No, I think we're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Like a conflict of interest or something?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I know at city council, they're always saying, well, they have a relationship with my business or
Right.
something, but,
We can check on that. j- Just to let you know, the JFK bus, there is the fund, it's a separate fund to maintain that piece. And currently, there's a 17,000 plus balance, and that's in a CD account. And that's a 6-month CD, which matures 6 months, and actually matured on June 16. Also, there's a $24.98 or almost $2,500 trust account, which is, they just kind of threw the interest that had been earned into a separate account, so it's more accessible. It doesn't require, there's no penalty when you withdraw. So what I would hope today, at the very least, is that we go ahead and write a memo to finance to transfer at least $5,000 to the trust account so that we will have the funds available to pay without penalty. That would be number one. So you have two proposals before you. One is for Mr. Fowler, which he can come up and talk to. The second one, the gentleman, John Simon, could not attend. He had a conflict that prevented him from coming, but he did provide some backup information about who he is and what his work is.
Is John Simon the same as John Kovezdi?
Yes, it is, but Simon is much easier to say.
Okay.
Wait a minute, Simon is Kovezdi?
Yes.
Of course it is.
My real name is.
As you can see, the cost, the bid runs the low 2910. Jeffrey Fowler's is, I don't have a copy.
Yeah, I gave them all back to you.
Oh, here it is, 52.5. There is a difference in the proposed work to be done. Jeffrey, if you'd like to come up, I think that's appropriate, and explain how you were going to restore the piece.
Thank you very much for inviting me to your special. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody on the commission. I came up to, well, we've kind of gone over a few things. What I'm trying to do is, with my proposal, reface the entire base that is really, really in desperate need of not just filling, but kind of changing the whole problem that has been there. We've got a problem with water sheening and puddling around the base, which has always been a problem because of a coving kind of a feeling to the surface by the bust. But the base itself is just terribly challenged, and I believe it should be refaced with similar black granite. And in my proposal, I also spoke about creating a grinding and polishing, kind of a doming effect to that top part so we can sheen the water away from the bust, something that's never been done before. The patina process will all have to be done on site. I don't really want to take the piece apart and remove it and take it to the studio, although that can be done, but I've contacted a couple different jobbers to help with the granite work. And I know of the history and of the success rate and such on such a project as this. Most of the work would be done in shop, brought out to the location, then done at site, and roughly probably a week to a week and a half of work at site, and probably 2.5, possibly 3 weeks off-site. The patina on the piece, we have to start a sandblasting of the finish, removing the old gold paint, getting back down, establishing a good connection with the chemicals to the bronze sculpture. But all this is work that I've been doing down here and for private and public art collections for a number of years.
Excuse me, Jeffrey, I just want to interrupt and let the commission know that you do have his, Jeffrey's
Yeah.
letter in your packet describing his background.
This is kind of work that I'm very committed to doing and understanding. And I've done a lot of research because, as we all know, as pieces are down here, we're in a really challenging environment that is constantly really. We have an environment that brings 185 degrees to surface temperatures and down below freezing. We have such a huge mineral deposit and problem with our water and drying. And as I proposed in the past to other situations very similar to this, reconfiguring sprinkler systems, changing out the design of where these pieces are located, whether you have to use a little decomposed granite, move the sprinklers away, use a drip system, use a lower head height, whatever is necessary to try to excuse me, keep the water from constantly bathing any of these art pieces, whether downtown, whether they're the fountain, whether they're any type of a piece. I'm glad to hear that the Castaneda piece has finally been fixed, hopefully. But still there's grass close by. You do have wind down here. But if we can at least get that down 50%, it's going to be a big, big help. But this piece, if you were to go out and visit it, you cannot believe the amount of almost molecular growth that's almost looking like stalagmites that are reaching almost a half an inch high at the top of the pad that's holding the bronze bust. So this water is reaching a height of 5.5 feet and has been puddling around the base of this bronze. Now I have noticed, I would say it's probably been 7 years ago. I don't know what had been done, but by looking at the bronze, it had been gold painted, probably with a high, shiny gold paint. I remember seeing it years back and going, well, they did something funny. But by observation, you can see actually the runs of the gold paint. And this can all be redone, and I would recommend, like I said before, just how I've done work in the past for other bronze sculptures, bringing it back down to the surface correct, doing a fine patina on it, doing a hot wax, following that up with a second, and this will be a very easy method and a very right method of reestablishing it correctly. The plaque that's existing on the front of the face would also be through the same process that we did with the Castaneda piece. They had a damaged plaque. Remove, I sandblast, I repatina, I buff out, highlight, and then recoat it with a clear coat, and then wax and put it back in place. The granite is also has an inscription that's been sandblasted or etched onto the marble or onto the granite, and we can do that at site as well. But a very thorough cleaning, and I think that if we can, one of my recommendations, is a highly recommendation at the bottom of the letter that I'd written, is really to kind of take a look at, again, the problem that will occur, and that's with the water that will eventually do the same type of damage as what we're seeing here, unless we were to change some of that sprinkler problem around the image.
A couple of questions.
Well, I think when we when we looked at it, we felt that the base needed to be redone. If you patch those cracks, I mean, you're gonna have an
It's just
awful
gonna be
looking
a
thing.
problem again.
And I wonder how you could work on that bust in the middle of the street there and sandblast with cars going by.
My process, what we've done, and I've had a sandblasting company come out before, they tent the entire piece. They have breathing apparatus. They're very clean at what they do.
Okay.
And I've done this at homes that are, say for instance, out Vintage in a water feature. That was extraordinarily,
You don't have to worry, okay?
yeah,
I didn't want to drive by
with
when you're
glass
doing
and
it.
stainless steel and everything nearby, and you're using such a
What-
fine sand, you have to be
Could you
very
do
careful.
a better job if you had the bust in the studio?
I love working on the work that like
On the
this
site.
at my studio, which is only 5 miles away. But this piece is.
I don't know how it's fastened on there.
It is such an extraordinarily heavy piece of granite that it's on, and being attached, and in my work as a sculptor, I know that I would have doweled, pinned, epoxied, and probably
Okay.
bolted from underneath.
Okay.
So to do
Be
so,
very
we
difficult.
probably end up breaking the base apart to get to remove. Another way is I can
So it's
actually take,
better to do it there. Okay.
very thin saws and remove it, but then I'd still have to dowel pin it. So what we can do is do it there. We'll set up a little structure. Most of my work, again, I was going to say, we're going to be doing the granite cutting, pre-cutting, all that at the shop elsewhere. When it comes down to doing the work there, it would probably be 3 days, and then another day of this, and then 3 more days, and then I would come in and do my final patina and the final, every bit of work on
Would there be
site.
another color of granite? Black granite shows every
I
little bit.
Absolutely, but I wish I had gotten them. I had 2 samples to bring to show, to mirror what had been done before. Now, there's a black absolute. There's also a flecked, much like what
That
you see
pearl,
on
black
a
pearl.
pearl. But I didn't want to go, I don't believe, because I really wanted to match up what was there. I believe the family who is paying for this ongoing maintenance would like to see it stay the same as
same.
I
it
agree.
was.
So
And
it's
I would
black
think
absolute
historically
then.
correct used similar material.
Yeah.
And I would always recommend that. Unless an artist came in and said, I chose the wrong material 20 years ago, I would highly recommend
Should we
going this
contact
direction.
them?
This is what, that's getting off in another direction, but I really do want to talk to you about that work as well, too, is really making an extraordinary, and I believe you have that in another letter that I wrote about really, really.
They do not
making
have the
a-
copy yet.
Oh, they don't?
No.
Okay. How can I word this now?
Why don't we
We
finish
should
the
finish
Let's
discussion?
stick up with this.
Two
Contacting that artist is a possibility, being that this piece was done back in probably, I will say, the latter part of the 60s. It has been signed, but there is no date. There's a foundry mark on the piece, no date. But I would imagine that because of the time I've been down here visiting for over 30, I remember this piece since day one when I first came down. So I would believe it's probably in the latter 60s when this piece was, put in place.
And asking either the artist and/or the people that funded it if they would, for their own benefit and everyone concerned, if we could change the color of the base.
That was something that I had presented to Kathy, and I thought what we could do is to tie in one end of Taquas McCallum with the Cahuilla Indian Maidens, and the other end, instead of going with the black granite or the absolute granite marble, why don't we face this with something like we've got flagstone up at that end, and we could do the same at the other end. I don't know if that would be something that the family would like to see happen to this base.
I don't know that people would make that leap. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I don't think they'll even begin to think of oh, look, it's the Cahuilla Indian Maidens. Oh, look, it's JFK. Because a lot of people don't even know JFK's there because
Right.
they've been by. But we have black granite in our master bath, and if you sneeze after cleaning it and leave the room and come back, there'll be 10 inches of dust on
Absolutely.
it. I mean, I live with it every day.
I use also, after the polish is done, there's a couple great, they're called silicone impregnators that will sheen off, help to sheen organic water and otherwise, other problematic, things that can occur on stone. But again, we give it literally just a few seasons of being bathed with our water and the mineral deposits and the
But
calcification.
there's another thing I thought of just generically, because this isn't the only situation. We put geraniums and little flowery things next to all of our things that need water. I mean, we do live in the desert. Why don't we use succulents next to our statues? And when we're talking about doing the Tahquitz Corridor and other places, and we're talking about doing this at our own home, is going to succulents and going to things that are water not needy, and especially surrounding these things, so that we don't have sprays of water hitting bases and statues. Why are we doing this?
Doesn't the city, isn't there somebody here that's like a landscaping engineer for the city? I mean, isn't there
Well, that's
who's
what
in
we've been
charge of the
talking about
water
doing.
system for the city of Palm Springs? I mean, it can't just be a bunch of gardeners out there stuffing sprinkler heads everywhere they want to.
This
throwing
is-
down flowers,
I'm
right?
looking at this, and you see
I know.
these little
Okay.
flowering things that say, "Give me water, give me water," and they're right next to
Right.
the.
We need to take the upper hand on this. You've got
Yeah.
a major art collection that is being totally destroyed, and it's being destroyed by the city, on who's ever in charge of the fact of handling the water. They've got to stop the water. It's not our position to sit there and tell them how to put sprinklers in. We need to make the statement and say, look, we are restoring our art collection. If any of your water hits it again, we're coming back on you guys, all right? And they need to stop it. Take these flowers, get them away, do whatever you want, but stop the action.
This is something that we also had addressed, and we have an opportunity at this end of Tahquitz McCallum to reconfigure, and I really think it would be an appropriate time to get whomever is on board or whoever wants to, raise the occasion, create a new look, and one that's going to require a whole lot less maintenance, planting, grass, and above all, watering. And
Yeah, but you see,
I think
what I'm
this-
getting at, Jeffrey, is that we're the Arts Commission.
right,
The bust is ours.
right.
We're not in charge of all the medium, and we're not in charge of the grass, and we're not in charge of the flowers.
Right.
We are, however, able to say, keep your stuff away from our artwork,
Right.
and do whatever you want. But if your
As-
water hits it, we're on you guys. And be
Right.
done with it. I mean, you could
Yeah.
milk the thing out and you'd be sit there, instantly we're gonna be gardeners and going out and saying, well, gee, the color of the flowers and.
You're
I
spending
don't wanna get
our money.
involved. Right.
What I hope to do, excuse me, but if we, once we decide that, okay, we're gonna do this restoration, we will work with Parks and Rec and the landscape company to make sure that the water.
Prior.
Or at least,
Prior.
as much is eliminated from hitting the base.
You
I mean,
betcha.
we're not gonna probably guarantee 100%.
Oh,
but-
yeah, we will.
but,
Oh, yeah, you will, 'cause
um,
alternatives
with
are-
grant.
You can.
You can sit
You
there and say, I
can.
want the whole thing
Well,
concreted around it if you want
Well, they
to.
have grass anywhere nearby. We can't help but have water blow on it, but
Then
we
let's
certainly can
move the
cut down
grass.
by dribblers in the
Mhm.
garden
Move,
area.
yeah,
We're
remove the grass,
suggesting that they-
decompose
Right.
granite, and keep the sprinklers at a much
Yeah.
further
Further
distance.
distance,
That's
right.
really
Who
what
says
we could
that
do
you
here.
have grass has to be
Plants, there's
there.
drip.
You know, put some
Right.
boulders out around
And
there
it's kind
instead of
of-
the little flowers and be done with the whole thing.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's ridiculous.
absolutely.
And the configuration too is
We
that,
will make that as part of the
I mean, River Rock.
the
and that stuff is
restoration
so
suggestion on this
beautiful.
piece. But I think that,
beautiful.
we start to go off in the direction of redesigning Tahquitz Canyon.
See,
And I
that's-
don't think we really
and
have
that's
the
exactly
time
where
I
or
don't
energy
wanna
at
go.
this
I'm
point.
not
It's a
doing it.
project coming up.
But now-
Well, yeah,
You-
and it is later on the
But
agenda.
I
this
have
is-
another question. Now, you said, is there any paperwork? If this bust is gold painted, and evidently this maintenance is handled by the trust, is there a group of
Laws.
paper, logs saying why they painted it gold? Was the bust damaged underneath and they've done some epoxy and a paint over it and you're.
This
down
could be a
there-
worst-case scenario because I've had to be faced with that and a lot of the collections that I'm seeing nowadays that are coming
Maybe we
from
need to
Pacific
research
Rim.
that.
But that's the one thing that we can find out once I remove.
Yeah, we
the
can find
paint
out
and
that by
coatings and
researching
such.
the logs first and find out why.
So
Probably
far,
not. It's not that incredibly.
Well, yeah,
I
but
would
I mean,
concur
for
with it.
somebody to go out and paint a piece of artwork gold,
Hey,
There had to be people that
it was
voted on
somebody's
it.
strange
It was
idea.
the gold era.
Right, I mean, somebody, I mean, we didn't go like, oh, let's
Jeffrey.
go out and paint it gold.
Right.
For
I
all you
don't know
know,
that-
you could have a
How-
destroyed piece of
how
art,
do
and
you
that was their
fix-
restoration at the time,
How
was
do
to
you fix
cover
the
it up.
nose?
Yeah,
And
well, I
now
don't know
we're
how
gonna go
that
through all
gold
this
thing
money
happened.
to get down there and go, I mean, how do you know a car didn't hit it?
Well, somebody
You know?
went out there at one time too and put in like ruby eyes.
Okay,
So we didn't have anything to do with that, and that had
Pardon
to
me?
be
Wait,
This
redone.
is
What did you
unfortunately what,
say?
Oh, it was a
Yeah.
long time ago from what I understand. Somebody glued in like little
this is the
fake
same as what happened with
gemstones
the
or something.
Oh, what
Carlos,
the-
the Castaneda piece when they
Yeah.
did her toes, and, you know, there's all kinds of wonderful
Yeah.
things.
Just
that
to
do
let-
it.
manicure
I
and
just
pedicure.
have, you know, and another question for the commission, I mean, you've gone out, you've looked at all the art pieces, everything's coming back that it needs to have work done. What we need from Jeffrey, would I be incorrect to assume, I won't assume anything, that if this proposal was to go through the art collection, not just the one bust, would it have any bearing on the price on this one bid?
The majority of this bid price is redoing of that stone base.
Okay, so if we had the whole collection offered out there, would not change, if I understand, would not change this bid?
I wish that you had, it wouldn't really change because for the most part, there's an amount of time, an estimate, and I stick to that when I've really taken a
Okay.
look at the work necessary.
This is the most damaged.
This piece,
I
you
think,
know,
wouldn't you say,
Oh,
Deb?
definitely.
It's the most damaged of the pieces that we have.
And the least
I
seen.
asked, to clarify, I asked Jeffrey to give me two proposals. One strictly for JFK because of the urgency to start restoring this. Secondly, which is the second topic that we'll get into, is the other letter that he has, and that's a proposal to do the survey of the collection. And I know the subcommittee went out and looked at each piece and gave a recommendation. His
But we're not
proposal.
professionals, right?
Right, his proposal is taking it a step further and actually is similar to the one I had given you last month that you wanted to, that from the Los Angeles company. And this is where we get into the bid process. So we can get into that now, or we can stick with what's your next step or desire to take care of JFK?
On JFK, my biggest question is, we have a second bid here, and there's no term of comparison. They're so vastly different, and, you know, there's 2 points on here where they're very similar. But the major thing, which is the base restoration, they're $4,000 apart.
That is correct. In all fairness to Mr. Simon, who
3,000.
actually got very short notice and came in on Tuesday and brought this to me yesterday. So he did a very quick turnaround, and I didn't have a chance to sit down and meet with him for any length of time to find out who he is or you know, discover anything else about him. But he did provide this sheet, which shows his background in conservation and restoration. His description of restoring the base was not as extensive. He was not going to put a finish on, or the granite. Refacing
new
it with
stone.
something else. It would be basically to
Patch it.
blast this down and to do some things that would
You know, if we wanted to do that, excuse me, I didn't want to interrupt, but because of the extraordinary amount of cracking and fatigue and non-stability, I wouldn't recommend that at all because it would probably fail within a year. And I believe it could be done in a better way, but it's going to cost the,
I like Jeffrey's
Overtone.
proposal because of the fact that he's thinking of refacing, and I agree it would give it more stability. And my only question is, how do you fill in the cracks in the nose, on the face, and
that, what I would do is that, is much like we do in Foundry, is that I surely hope we don't have to come out here with a portable welding equipment, because I'd have to fill with bronze, and then I would then take my air tools and refine
Okay.
and resurface. What I am looking forward to, and that may be the case, but upon looking at the piece, I think I can do that. I will sandblast the piece with a 90 grit sand. It's very fine. It doesn't take away bronze, but it removes all the exterior junk that's been on there for so many, so many years. And then at that time, I can refine, smooth with hand tools. If I need to bring out my compressor, I can do that with the air tools. If I have to, which I don't believe is necessary, I really look and read the piece and the age, the foundry. I have a pretty good, because I've got an extensive
Yeah.
background in it. If we have to refine the surface, that can be done. But I took a good look at it, and I believe that my proposal kind of covers what I believe is necessary, but I'm really, really animate about doing the job correctly the first time, so this can be kind of swept aside, said this was handled and it's handled nicely for the long term. We don't have to come back and address this in a year or 2 or
Right.
3
Yeah.
or more.
Jeffrey, you really think you can actually fix that nose without, you can act, what do you put silly putty or something in there?
No, this is just, it's just a matter of refining files, emery cloth, whatever's necessary to
If I
do
get
so.
enough information from you, I can go out and
You
do
can
it
go out and
myself.
do it yourself.
You could.
Yeah.
How
This
long
is
will
like-
it take?
I had said rough.
From
and I
start to
didn't.
finish.
I didn't write it in here. I'm sorry, I didn't include that. But I thought really, by the time we started, get the stone started in the shop being cut, I would say about 4 weeks, 3.5. But that's not going to be work on site. Probably 3 of those weeks are work off site. Week and a half will be there at site.
Can I ask one other question on this, Jeffrey?
Mhm.
I mean, your expertise are in sculpting and in bronze and so on and so forth, right?
And
In
very
stone
much so
sculpting.
in conservation. I've been doing this since really my first pieces when I was about 8 years old.
So almost
So
20 years.
I'm gonna
About
sound real
18.
naive here, and I'm just gonna throw this idea out. It seems to me that if the granite at the bottom of this
Mhm.
bust, the artwork, of course, is the bust, and the granite is the base.
Correct.
Would it be kind of naive for me to assume that we could call out a stonemason that could redo the granite and be done with the base? Without doing a whole,
The
you know?
only,
Those
the-
cracks are-
it has to really be done at site, and you could go out and call for that. I would only recommend people that I would, I really research, and I've done work with a lot of different people out here in the community. But I wanted to also dome and change the top configuration ever so slightly. So whatever water does occur, again in the future, falls away from the piece and doesn't puddle in.
See,
And that's a big-
going
that's a-
back-
that's a
That's
big
going back
piece.
to that same other scenario. I mean, I'm looking at it from the fact that if.
Well, we'll still have
If I'm
rain.
gonna vote to do the restoration, I don't want water on it.
That's
So I
right.
don't need to
But we'll still have rain, and we do have a kind of an,
Yeah.
they call it an acid rain.
Right? Come on.
Not much, but you know what? I was amazed by the amount of growth by this piece, and I wish I had a detailed, camera photo of that. But I was just, I couldn't believe, because I had seen a lot of bad pieces all around the community. I've done a lot of work for private and public works, and this one was, and the height of it as well too. I was amazed by the amount of water that had been up there and collected and done the damage it has. My concern too is about the base. You get water in these cracks. You get this constant, heat of expansion and contraction. This base is challenged. I would not. If it was an interior piece, and if you wanted to save money and use black akimi, and you really did a number in vain, you could make it look fair at best. But I don't believe that's really what the city wants to see. They want to see this done right. And so, my work is pretty reasonable with the repatina, cleansing of the piece, the plaque, and all that. But because of the amount of work that's going on, see, plaque comes off, sandblasting of John Fitzgerald Kennedy back on that. This is all stuff that kind of falls into the same amount of work and time at site. So I try to include all that. The big hit definitely is, refacing it with the correct stone of choice, whether it's sticking with, historically what was on there. And I would think that that's what they would want to see, because granddad or
That's
whomever
my
did
feeling.
this.
I mean, I think we should keep it in the category exactly what it is.
I-
And we're
I
talking
believe
about
so, too.
restoration of art. So it should be restored to what it was
When it was
because
set up.
when it was done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the whole idea of it. Not to change anything, not to change colors.
Now, when
not
I'm-
to change black.
So far, we're a little challenged in finding the records. So My next step is going to be perhaps the city clerk's office might have something.
This is kind of along the lines of what my other letter was about, and this was, okay.
Okay, before we get into that, again, I want to, what is it that you want to do on the JFK? I mean,
I think that we should go ahead with the JFK. I mean, it is in the worst possible condition. And we work with that one first and get it like it should be, get the landscaping around there changed so we don't have anything but rain that falls on it, no other water. And we go ahead on Jeffrey's proposal to redo the base and all of the other things with it. And then at maybe the next meeting or 2 times from now, whatever, we take up the question of each one of our pieces and what they need.
Well,
Go ahead
Would
with
there
this
be a
one.
difference in the bid, Jeffrey, if you're not doing the doming on the top?
No,
I mean, because now you were talking about changing substructure, right? to-
This is,
to do
okay, and
this
I was gonna
dome,
try to clarify that. When I'm saying refacing, I'm doing 4 sides.
Right?
The top portion itself, this is going to add 3/4 of an inch roughly on all sides, which is going to change a little bit of the step up at the top of this at the top of this,
So you want to come out
Trapezoid.
over the top of the
I'm,
base structure?
I'm gonna try to keep this as close as I can to what's existing. But what I am going to do is, as this trapezoid runs up, runs it at 90 degrees roughly, comes back up again, and then comes into the base, buses above that. This is going to add, overall, 1.5 inches to 2 sides, 3/4 inch piece. What I'm going to do is, instead of having this coming up and then dropping straight in, we're going to knock this at about a 5-degree or so angle, just a sheen. And the top
okay.
part, being the most important, will be domed very slightly. You will not notice it, but it will help to alleviate that water puddling problem and future
sounds smart.
crud from occurring.
And I defy anybody to tell the difference when it's done. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, then that's what I would do. I try to build in and then really look and kind of engineer the future problems and try to eradicate those. We're gonna go to this kind of work and this extensive work, do it right, instead of wishing we had done something different in the future.
What I see here, is if I can interpret this, let's vote on who will get the contract for the JFK, the way it's presented. And then I see, and then what I see secondly is, do we vote on charging Kathy with going forward with getting the city to back off on their water thing as a separate issue? Do we want to tackle that right now?
Sure.
Because I think that has to be running parallel with this, because to do this and say,
The
6
water's
months
got
from
to
now, we
stop
want you to do
before you
something
do
about the
anything.
water. Because we're spending money on the thing downtown with the Standing Woman. We're doing this now, even though it's from a fund
And
that's been
Charlie.
established. And Charlie, we're gonna be faced with the same program, and if they drag their heels, we're gonna have the same thing all over again. So we'll have 2 motions.
So what do we do if the city doesn't have a landscape engineer on staff that
Well,
does it?
then we go out there and tear the thing out
There
ourselves.
doesn't
We
one
pick
thing
it.
to
Yell at me a
see. I mean,
lot.
they're into,
We'll
Well, I
just
think it's
have
just something
their
that we need
speakers.
to put,
Find out.
we
I
need
think we
to
need to
show
face
them
this once and for
exactly
all.
how
Yeah.
important this is. And if they don't have somebody that has the capabilities to understand what damage is going on, then we need to hire and charge back to the city as an offset
Well.
for the damage that's done to the artwork.
Nice, but that doesn't happen that way.
In a perfect world,
but-
huh?
I mean, you can sit there, yeah.
We
but I mean,
just need
all
to,
I'm
we need
getting
to
at is
present to them
people
how
need to
serious we
understand.
are about the
Exactly.
situation.
Well, they
Exactly.
charge us for services they give us, so I don't see why we should charge them for services
I-
they don't give us.
I think we just need to have in motion
all right, so I
something.
make a motion.
Okay, so we need 2 motions.
Okay, I make a motion that we award the contract for the restoration and all of the repair work on the Kennedy JFK bust to Jeffrey. And that we accept his bid here of $52.50 for that. Because as we said, no, this isn't a side, it shouldn't be a part of the motion, okay?
We'll have a
Think that's it.
second.
I second it.
Any discussion?
I just find it kind of interesting that you're making a motion and approving a contract, and we haven't, this other fella hasn't discussed, we don't know anything what he's capable of doing. It seems though the only difference between the two bid, nothing against.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and it's all based on the base. I
That's
mean, this
right.
gentleman over
That's what I
here
said.
is basically saying, look, I do the same work, he's just patching and using the granite, and
Right.
Jeffrey's
We're putting
replacing.
new,
You're putting
right,
new.
5 new pieces.
Yeah.
And you feel comfortable with spending the $4,000
Or
on the base.
it's not that much difference.
No, the difference is totally, actually Jeffrey is,
$2,000 difference.
I'm cheaper on the
no,
actual
Jeffrey's
patina.
cheaper on the bust and
On all that,
Jeffrey's
yeah, right,
essentially.
that's what I'm
Right.
saying, it's all the money is on the granite,
base.
It's
basically.
$2,000, and I know what black absolute granite costs, because I have it in my kitchen. So for $2,000,
Oh, I
we're
have it in
getting
my
5
bathroom.
pieces of
Actually, it'll be
of,
four.
You feel
black
comfortable. You feel
absolute.
comfortable
I
with
feel
it.
comfortable
in
with
my
that.
rental
I also feel it would be good if we could change to another kind of granite if the artist and
Or the
the
family.
family agreed. But
Would you want
That would
as-
be a task that could take us another,
6 months.
But I
Right.
think
Right.
Call Caroline Kennedy.
Then you're getting away from that old fact about art restoration, now you're making modifications,
Modifications.
changes, and things like that.
Well, then we're not. If we go with the black absolute, we're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
okay.
We're
But
not.
again, we have to also parallel at the same time the
That's the
changes
other
to the water
Yeah.
and the sprinkling
But that's
system.
the second motion, it's a
So
parallel motion.
I'll make a motion, number one, to contact the city or whatever department's in charge
We
of the
better
water.
vote on
Do you
this
vote
one
on,
first.
do I
We-
roll
we-
call on the first motion, please?
Is the first motion the one on the contract?
Yes, yes.
Let's just do a voice vote.
Voice vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Jeffrey? Okay,
Expect
we
it to
have
be
it.
done tomorrow.
Now, the parallel motion?
Would be,
Tracy?
I make a motion that we contact whatever department is involved with the watering. And not only at this location, but to let them inform them that we are doing a restoration. We want all waters removed from the area. If it needs to be a landscape change, that is their problem. They're damaging the art collection for the city of Palm Springs.
In all locations.
All locations.
I second.
Discussion. But we, really, with teeth, I mean, we really, I mean,
When they see what
Charlie,
we're,
all
when
these-
they see what it's costing to restore the artwork, that'll have teeth in itself.
we'd like the water removed from the
Because
fountain.
basically,
I
what's
re-
gonna end up costing, they're gonna lose the
And I
sign
really
to Palm Springs.
tried to look at the whole project and see what's gonna be necessary and trim it and really refine my estimate to where that's what it's gonna cost.
Any discussion?
No, this is,
Call for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
okay, thank you. And maybe we can go through this somewhat quickly, Jeffrey, not to
Wordy.
discount this in any way. But again, the next sheet that you're getting is the proposal from Jeffrey that we initially talked about to do a survey of all the pieces. And he outlines various things that need to be done, that he would do in that survey, photographs, a history documenting when the piece was installed, and I don't have a sheet in front of me, so I don't remember everything.
Why don't you use mine?
We do have some of this information, which I have started a database that does show the artist, the media, excuse me, and the location, and so that, some of it has already been started. But I think there's a lot more that we can do. However, this particular item, again, we have to kind of look at differently with the new maintenance staff that is coming on board. And in that, we would ask the contractor of this sort of proposal, the survey proposal, to also work with and train our maintenance staff on maintaining the pieces. That doesn't mean to go out and do the restoration or the conservation of the piece, but at least to recognize that there are bird droppings or water stains or things like that, because that person will have the charge to recognize the water damage and things like that and fix it quickly. So that would be a component of the proposal. Frankly, I haven't had time to investigate further on the city's process or format or requirements, and that it will be my next phase. So part of the discussion needs to be about the maintenance staff and the bid proposal and how we're going to do that.
Do we need Jeffrey for anything on this?
I'd like to ask if there was any questions, because this is something that I've designed that I believe is truly, truly necessary for any, public art or any collection of art to have a great history known, ongoing needs right now, what can be looked upon in the future as what has been done to the piece, get any information and all information about the artist living or passed away, a way to contact them in case something happens, like with the chairman of the Lynx. If I lived across another part of the world, they'd say, Jeff, we've got a problem, we got to recast your club, but we don't have one here. Can you contact your foundry? Can we get it done? This is the kind of stuff that will be necessary in the future for all of the, art pieces in the city's collection. It's just a really historical, really well put together, documented, and then with my abilities, showing what I had tried to do once for the city of Palm Desert 8 years ago. The needs, whether they be now, conservation needs, if there was graffiti, broken elements, whatever's necessary. But really it would be a template that could be used for any further future acquisitions, and then you'd have a lot of questions that we always would have answered on a file that can always be added to, referred to in 20 years from now.
So this is not just conservancy, but it's also,
Documentation,
Documentation.
assessment,
so it takes,
thorough background.
Question? Did you say that you did it for Palm Desert on their
I
art show?
tried to in '95.
Yeah. Did you
And
give them a sample of kind of a?
And I was working with Save Outdoor Sculpture SOS out of Washington, D.C. They have a permanent archive. They know what other cities have in their collections. And also with American Institute of Conservationists.
Do you have any copies of those you could bring?
I've got them with me.
Yeah, that shows how the actual.
And what I
report
had done
looked.
is that I created kind of a code, and it showed what is necessary. But, this code was just a couple letters, and in it also showed the procedures, the needs, on and on and on. This is a step further, because you folks have already done some of the work that I was talking about. Year of acquisition, year the piece was created, when it was installed, but I'm taking it a bit further on a lot of different levels. And I think it would be a perfect way of having finally in your, files, a really thorough, comprehensive, and also a template to use for future.
Yeah. Is there? I'd want to look at it and see what this. From what I understand on this letter, you're talking about $2,600 for.
I'm just throwing out $100
$100
per.
a piece.
And you know what? Some will be easy, and I've looked at my price now. I'm thinking maybe I should have charged a bit more, because there's a lot of work, and I'll be, also taking photographs digitally, putting those into the file.
So each
and I'm
sculpture
thinking,
would look
gosh,
more
I'm
like-
just selling this
we'd have
really
something
short
like
right
this
now.
that
It
would
would be
show?
similar to this. There'd be at least a
Before,
few,
after.
and this would all be before at this point in time. But I would definitely
you
do
may want
one
to go to
afterwards.
105.
One of the things about what we need to have further discussion on is the elements of a proposal and making
There's
sure
no
that we do
photographs.
capture everything. And understanding what Jeffrey's saying, it's also very similar to the conservation company that Palm Desert has hired to do their pieces. And it really starts to create a database for the Arts Commission for future, and it's something that we would put into our computer electronic system, so it would be easily updated and filed, rather than files in the drawers with.
Now, granted, I would
Yeah, but
also
a
need.
lot of this information that you'd get probably from us.
We have
from our
some, we have
records, right?
some of the information, some of it's blank, that we can fill that in. We'll do some research. We'll try to see if, we can contact either the living artist or the foundry or the entity that was involved in fabrication. All these things would be included in this in case of anything terrible happening down the way. Say a car or a truck ran into it and really did some damage.
Okay.
You know.
And included in this, is from what I'm understanding, included in this survey, this report, is going to be what recommendations to restore each piece.
An estimate of time and costs to complete these recommendations.
Okay.
Second paragraph.
I like also your urgency ranking, too, that you put on there.
That's important because we have certain pieces, just a few that need some help, like yesterday. A few pieces are in pretty good shape, and they could be held off and budgeted as a time allotment for months or maybe even next year. This is just a key.
This is just one document?
This was one document. I didn't bring 12 for all of us to look at, but this is what I had done again 8 years ago to show them the immediate needs and a key to show the required steps.
I'm sorry. I think for the sake of time, maybe this gives us something to digest, and we naturally will have this again on next month's agenda.
Maybe we can get copies of this so everybody can have it.
I can get that
See what-
for sure to you and just at least. But again, this is 8 years old. This was we piecemealed instead of taking the whole job on. At the time, we were looking at about $18,000 of work for 65 or 63 pieces. This didn't include some of their big pieces. One that was in need of an entire restoration and repaint. It was Desert Desserts, and it's a large steel fabricated piece. It's at the it's alongside the park, and it's a meandering, huge image. And I mentioned it in here. It would take several, probably hundreds of hours to do.
Yeah.
So that was not included. But unfortunately, a lot of the pieces are still in a bad state. I did do a few of the pieces that were the worst. I do have a photograph here that's in front of Kathy that shows one of the pieces that was on the median.
Let me see.
But please look at the good photographs because it's a little bit better than the laser copies. You can kind of see what we had to do on this caddy. It's a good looking little piece. I believe it was done by just take that and use it on the Sherman.
They'll never miss it.
I think Gary Price may have been the artist on this piece, but this was on the median for 1 year in Palm Desert, and it shows what happened because of the water and vegetation, guano, insect, garbage, everything. So we can, we'll bring that back up to that level, but the original photographs showed a lot stronger.
Yeah, the photographs are great. You gotta have the photos.
I have a collection, and I could have brought it in, of works that I have done in every medium, much like what the other gentleman has proposed, but I tried to do that in my writing skills.
So you were doing Palm Desert's art collection?
I did only a few pieces,
Few
but I
pieces?
proposed for the entire collection, 95, I believe it
And
was.
Can you tell me why they didn't have you go through the collection?
I don't know. At the time, I was working with
Diane Morgan.
Catherine Sass.
Mhm.
And then after Catherine left to go to San Diego, I was working with John Nagus. And then since then, and I believe that probably my files were just kind of lost in the prelim of the time. I don't really know, but we did a few pieces.
And they haven't had any more restoration done? I mean, the pieces are still in need?
Not that I know of. I'm down here, and I work with another gentleman that I worked with at the Foundry at College of the Desert, 13 years ago. His name is John Brandstetter. John's still involved in this process. He and I share work sometimes. He's down in Indio. I don't know John Simon or his name, but he might be very good at what he does. But I do know that we are two very, very good entities out here and that share this type of work. John mostly on bronze and sculpture, myself with many other types and mediums of art as well.
We've got to move on.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Appreciate it.
Very much,
Thanks.
Jeffrey.